Understand something, and I'm going to say this very clearly. I was not there. Only thing I was hearsay, not hearsay, but
Omaha, Nebraska, a quiet Midwestern city where life moves at a steady pace. But in August of 2013, a wave of blood and terror would shatter that calm, 4 people dead in just 10 days. And at the center of it all, one man whose descent into madness would shock America. When Niko Jenkins walked out of prison in July 2013, he'd spent nearly half his life behind bars.
As the man convicted of brutal murders in 2013 is sentenced to death, the first death penalty imposed since Nebraskans voted to bring it back. Niko Jenkins had a lot to say in court throughout the last 4 years, but today he was noticeably quiet.
But what no one could predict, what no one truly believed possible, was that within weeks, Omaha would become the stage for one of the most chilling killing sprees in modern Nebraska history. Born on September 16, 1986, in Omaha, Nebraska, Niko Allen Jenkins grew up surrounded by violence, instability, and crime. His family was well known to local authorities. By his own account, he was raised in what he called a war zone. His mother, Lori Jenkins, and several relatives had frequent run-ins with the law. From a young age, Jenkins displayed disturbing behavior. At 7 years old, he brought a loaded gun to school. At 11, he was already committing robberies. Teachers and juvenile officers described him as volatile, aggressive, and unpredictable. By the time he turned 13, Jenkins was sent to a youth detention facility for armed robbery. He would spend the next decade cycling in and out of prison, each stint shaping him further into the monster he would become. While incarcerated, he immersed himself in a warped world of ancient gods, mystical delusions, and violent fantasies. Jenkins claimed he was visited by Apophis, the ancient Egyptian serpent god of chaos, who commanded him to punish those who disrespected him or society. In one chilling letter to prison staff, Jenkins wrote, "Apophis speaks to me. He tells me the hour of judgment is near. The world must see the cleansing fire." Despite these red flags and repeated warnings from mental health professionals, Jenkins was released from prison on July 30, 2013, after serving 10 years for armed carjacking and assault. He had been locked away since his teenage years, now a grown man with no plan, no supervision, and voices in his head. Upon release, Jenkins returned to Omaha, living with his mother, Lori Jenkins, and his sister Erica. Friends and relatives later described his behavior as erratic. He talked constantly about gods, rituals, and sacrifices. Just 11 days after walking free, on August 11, 2013, he struck. 2 men, Juan Uribe Pena and Jorge Cajiga Ruiz, were lured to a remote area near Spring Lake Park by 2 women Jenkins had coerced into helping him. He promised the victims a party and sexual favors. Instead, they were ambushed. According to police reports, Jenkins shot both men at close range. Their bodies were found the next morning, slumped inside their vehicle, execution style. Investigators initially suspected a drug deal gone wrong, but the brutality was unlike anything they'd seen. The women later testified that Jenkins laughed after the killings, claiming Apophis demanded blood. One of them told detectives, he said the serpent god was pleased. He wasn't even hiding it. He thought it was righteous. The murders sent ripples through Omaha's south side. Then, just days later, another body surfaced. On August 19, 2013, Curtis Bradford, a 22-year-old man who had once shared a prison cell with Jenkins, was found shot twice in the back near an abandoned garage. What startled investigators was that Bradford had posted a Facebook photo just hours earlier with Niko Jenkins, smiling and posing together. It would be the last picture ever taken of him. Detectives immediately zeroed in on Jenkins, but he had vanished. As police scrambled for leads, Jenkins prepared for his final act of violence. On August 21, 2013, Jenkins spotted Andrea Kruger, a 33-year-old mother of 3, driving home from her job as a bartender. She was minutes from her house when Jenkins pulled alongside her at an intersection near one. He forced her from her car and shot her multiple times. Her body was discovered the next morning, lying in the road, her purse and vehicle missing.
Investigation. We want to maintain the integrity of that investigation.
Douglas County Chief Deputy Tom Wheeler says the public played a crucial role after Andrea Kruger's death. Tips led investigators from the murder scene near 168th and Fort to her SUV near 43rd and Charles.
It was a senseless killing committed purely, as Jenkins would later claim, to appease the serpent god. By this point, Omaha was in panic. 4 people murdered in 10 days. Random victims. No pattern, no logic, just chaos. Investigators connected the dots. The same 9mm weapon, similar shell casings, overlapping witnesses. Surveillance footage from a gas station finally captured Jenkins driving Kruger's stolen SUV. On August 30th, 2013, just over a week after Kruger's murder, police raided the Jenkins residence. Inside, they found evidence linking him to all 4 killings: shell casings, clothing, and a shotgun.
Officials won't say what they took from this Tudor Heights apartment Thursday night, but sources say evidence recovered may be connected to several unsolved homicides. This apartment near 108th and Maple is where police arrested 26-year-old Niko Jenkins Thursday for an outstanding felony warrant for terroristic threats.
Jenkins was arrested without incident, but what followed was far from ordinary. In his first interrogation, he confessed to everything, calmly, almost proudly.
Now's the time, because otherwise, you're right, they're going to look at Niko Jenkins as a flat, bloody killer. That's what's going to happen.
You not realize I got Niko Jenkins? You not realize that? I got Niko Jenkins. I got you. I got your DNA at the murder scene. I got your DNA in the car. I got the weapon. I got Niko Jenkins. I don't need to make, I don't care about it. I just want other people that are involved in it. What the hell happened out there and why? I already, I know who, I know what, I know when, I know where. And then when I talked to you earlier, you were saying stuff about a carjacking. That woman's husband and children, that woman's husband is grieving right now. This is not just some psycho killer that just wanted to go for. I'm documenting psychiatrically disordered. I'm documenting chemically imbalanced. This is a fact.
The footage shows him speaking about the murders as if describing a divine mission. Apophyes came to me in my cell, Jenkins said during questioning. He told me these were sacrifices. I had to obey. Detectives watched in disbelief as he spoke about offering souls and spiritual warfare. It was clear they weren't dealing with a typical killer. Once in custody, Jenkins began sending letters to judges, police, and media outlets, rambling messages filled with Egyptian symbols, threats, and claims of divine authority. He said he would sacrifice anyone who disrespected his God. He even carved the number 666 and Egyptian imagery into his forehead using a razor blade. In one court document, he wrote, "The Egyptian god Apophyes demands the annihilation of the filthy who mock his power. I am his servant." Jenkins refused to cooperate with court-appointed attorneys, claiming they were agents of the serpent. He insisted on representing himself. During one hearing, he appeared shirtless, his face covered in tattoos and self-inflicted scars, screaming at the judge about divine vengeance. Another time, he attempted to cut his own tongue to speak the language of Apophorphus. Judge Peter Bataillon later remarked, "In all my years, I have never seen a defendant so volatile and so convinced of his own delusions." The trial of Niko Jenkins began in 2017, nearly 4 years after the murders. The case had been delayed repeatedly due to questions over his mental competency. Prosecutors argued that Jenkins was a cold-blooded killer who used mental illness as an excuse. The defense and multiple psychologists insisted he suffered from schizoaffective disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and deep psychosis. Dr. Eugene Olivedato, a psychiatrist who examined him, testified he exhibits symptoms consistent with severe mental illness. However, he also demonstrates manipulation and awareness of his actions. The courtroom became a spectacle. Jenkins delivered bizarre speeches, quoted Egyptian scripture, and accused the court of plotting against divine will. He sometimes refused to attend his own hearings. At one point, he told the judge, "You cannot sentence me to death. I am already dead. The serpent has taken me." Prosecutors countered with overwhelming evidence, ballistic matches, witness testimony, and his own recorded confessions. After months of hearings and evaluations, the court reached a decision. On May 16, 2017, Judge Peter Bataillon sentenced Niko Jenkins to death for the murders of Juan Uribe Peña, Jorge Cajiga Ruiz, Curtis Bradford, and Andrea Kruger.
Commission of these 4 murders over a 10-day period is one of the worst killing sprees in the history of this state. Each one of these murders was a deliberate and planned act. The victims were pre-selected and the murders were purposeful. Therefore, this panel finds that the death penalty is appropriate, should be, and is hereby given for each of the 4 murders by the defendant. It is therefore the sentence of this court as follows. At case CR 13-2768, count 1, murder in the first degree, a class 1 felony, death. Count 2, use of a deadly weapon, firearm to commit a felony, a class 1C felony, 45 to 50 years to run consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7, and 10. Count 3, possession of a deadly weapon by a prohibited person, class 1D felony, 45 to 50 years to run consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7, and 10, and count 2.
In addition, he received more than 500 years in prison for related charges. Jenkins showed no remorse. Instead, he smiled and said, "The gods have spoken. Their judgment is above yours." Outside the courtroom, Andrea Kruger's mother wept, telling reporters, "He took my daughter for nothing. I'll never understand it. I just want peace." For the families of the victims, peace would never fully come. The images of their loved ones, the randomness of the violence, and the haunting face of Jenkins remained burned into Omaha's memory. Psychiatrists who studied Jenkins described him as a psychological paradox. He showed traits of deep psychosis, hearing voices, believing in Egyptian deities, but also deliberate manipulation and planning. Some experts believed he was both mentally ill and a calculating killer. Dr. Bruce Gutnick, who interviewed Jenkins, in one interview from prison, he told a reporter, "They think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm enlightened. The world will burn, and I am its messenger." He understands right from wrong. He simply doesn't care. His delusions amplify his violence, but they don't control it. Jenkins' behavior behind bars continued to shock. He assaulted guards, mutilated himself, and filed dozens of bizarre lawsuits against the state, once claiming Nebraska failed to provide him ritualistic materials for worshipping Apophis. Perhaps the most disturbing part of Jenkins' story isn't just what he did, but how the system allowed it to happen. Before his release, prison staff had repeatedly warned that Jenkins was dangerous, unstable, and not fit for society. He had requested to remain in a mental health facility, fearing what he might do if released. But bureaucratic limitations and overcrowding led to his discharge. Nebraska's correctional system faced heavy criticism. A later investigation revealed multiple missed red flags and inadequate mental health treatment. In 2015, the Nebraska Ombudsman's Office released a report admitting systemic failure in Jenkins' supervision. One former corrections officer said, "We all knew he wasn't ready. He told us he would kill. We didn't believe him. Then he did." The case sparked nationwide debate about prison reform, mental illness, and the death penalty. Today, Niko Jenkins sits on Nebraska's death row at Tecumseh State Correctional Institution. He spends most of his time in isolation, writing letters filled with hieroglyphs and apocalyptic ramblings. Despite the passage of time, his mental state appears unchanged. In 2020, he filed another motion, claiming that, Apophis demanded the state be punished for sentencing his servant. His execution date remains unscheduled, as appeals and competency reviews continue. For many, Jenkins represents a terrifying fusion of madness and evil, a man lost between insanity and intent. Epilogue: Legacy of Fear. More than a decade has passed since those 10 days of terror in 2013, but Omaha still remembers. The victims, Juan, Jorge, Curtis, and Andrea, are memorialized by families who refuse to let their names fade. Andrea Kruger's husband once said, "She was the light of our home." Jenkins took that from us. He talks about gods, but he's the devil. The case of Niko Jenkins remains a haunting example of how violence, untreated mental illness, and systemic failure can collide with devastating consequences. It's a story not just about one man's madness, but about a society that looked away until it was too late. In the end, says criminologist Dr. Elaine March, Jenkins didn't just destroy 4 lives. He exposed how fragile our line between justice and chaos really is. In August 2013, Omaha saw horror it had never known. 4 innocent lives taken by a man who claimed to serve an ancient god. Whether driven by delusion or darkness, Niko Jenkins stands as a chilling reminder. Sometimes, the monsters we fear most are the ones we create.